So I spoke at an education summit for Microsoft. I also spoke at an education summit for Apple. At the Microsoft summit, I would say that 80% of the executives spent the vast majority of their presentations talking about how to beat Apple. At the Apple summit, 100% of the executives spent 100% of their presentations talking about how to help teachers teach and how to help students learn. One was obsessed with their vision, one was obsessed with where they were going, the other one was obsessed with beating their competition. Guess which one is frustrated in this competition? Because the finite player is playing against its competitors, and the infinite player is playing against themselves. The infinite player wakes up every single day and says, how do we be better this week than we were last week? How do we perform better next month than we did this month? It's a game of constant improvement. It is totally fine to study our competition for tactical reasons, but the number of companies that study their competition for strategic reasons is scary, which means they react strategically to their competition and will change entire business models on basically on a whim, which means the company has no stability and is going all over the place. In other words, you're wasting time and resources, and you're frustrating the people on the inside because they don't know where they're going. It's a constant game of reaction. A long time ago, in a previous life, I used to work at an ad agency, and I was a junior kid, and I worked in the competitive analysis department. And I worked on one of the telephone company clients that we had. And my job was to report to the client on what the competition was doing. Now, the number of other telephone companies that existed in America that day was quite a long list. And the client couldn't afford to study them all. So we studied a handful of them. So think about that for a second. They're studying their competition, but they're only studying some of their competition. Well, what about all the others? Not to mention the fact that in the infinite game, it's usually the competitors we don't know about that take us down, not the ones we do know about. MySpace had no idea that Facebook even existed until it completely destroyed their company because they were so focused on the ones they did know about. And I find that fascinating because remember, in the infinite game, we don't always know who all the competitors are. So at the end of my talk at Microsoft, they gave me a gift. They gave me the new Zune when it was a thing. Zune was the competitor to the iPod. And this thing was gorgeous. An absolutely spectacular piece of technology. Beautifully designed. The user interface was beautiful. It was intuitive and simple. It was a really remarkable piece of technology. It didn't work with iTunes, which means I couldn't use it, which is a different problem. But the technology itself was really quite sophisticated and quite stunning. So after I got done with my talk at Apple, I'm in the back of a taxi with a very senior Apple executive, sort of employee number 12 kind of guy, and I decided to stir the pot. And I turned to him and I said, you know, Microsoft gave me their new Zune, I said to him, and it is so much better than your iPod Touch. To which he responded, I have no doubt. Conversation over. Because the infinite player understands that sometimes you're ahead and sometimes you're behind. And sometimes your product is better and sometimes it's not. The goal is not to win every battle. The goal is to outlast the competition. You let the competitor compete against itself and drive itself down to zero while you're out there improving your systems constantly. This is what it means to play the infinite game. And I've become totally fascinated by this because the companies that frustrate their competitors, the ones that seem unbeatable, the ones that everybody targets but seems unable to reach, accidentally are playing the infinite game. So in the US, Costco frustrates Walmart. But if you listen to Jim Senegal, the founder of Costco, he talks about building a business for the next 50 or 100 years, not for the next 1 year or 1 quarter for Wall Street. He talks about the need to take care of his employees first, his customers second, his shareholders third, because that's the way he will build a long-lasting company. And it is true, when we prioritize the needs of the shareholders, which, by the way, is the equivalent of a coach prioritizing the wants of the fans over the needs of the players. That's what shareholder supremacy is. That doesn't build a strong, stable team. You may win a game, you may even win a tournament, but you won't build a team that can win year after year after year after year. Southwest Airlines frustrates all the other airlines in America because they're competing against themselves. They put their employee number one, they put their customer number two, they put their shareholder number three. That is the order in which you play the infinite game, because that is the order in which you build stability. But companies that have it in the reverse order go out of business or are merged or acquired because they run out of the will or the resources to compete by themselves. I'm totally fascinated by this. The vast, vast, vast majority of businesses don't know the game that they're playing, don't know the game that they're in, which means we're all playing by the wrong rules.